My parents skipped my wedding and called it a waste of money. When my sister got engaged, one choice I made turned their plan against them. They didn't come to my wedding. No calls, no messages, not even a half-hearted excuse about being busy. Just silence. I waited until the last moment, still clinging to a thin thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, my parents would walk through those doors, pretending they cared. But they didn't. My wedding, the biggest day of my life, was just another ordinary Saturday for them. It wasn't like I hadn't seen it coming. My parents had been vocal about how frivolous weddings were, how I was wasting money on nonsense, how I should have just had a courthouse ceremony and been done with it. But it wasn't about the money, it never was. It was about control. My younger sister Melanie was the golden child. She could do no wrong. And me? I had spent my entire life trying to prove that I was worthy of their love, their respect. I thought maybe if I did everything right, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. I was wrong. Melanie, of course, was there. She had made a show of coming in late, strutting into the reception in a dress that was just a little too white to be a coincidence, and spending the entire evening sulking at the back table, barely speaking to me. When I finally got a moment alone with her, I asked why Mom and Dad hadn't come. She scoffed. Why would they? It's just a wedding, not something important. That sentence burned itself into my brain, not something important. But a year later, when Melanie got engaged, everything changed. Suddenly, weddings were important. My parents, who had dismissed mine as a waste of time, were now treating hers like the event of the decade. They gushed about venues, debated color schemes, and swooned over dress designs. And then came the call. We were thinking, my mother said, her voice careful, calculating, that you could help out with some of the costs. Just a little bit, to support your sister. I almost laughed. Almost. Oh, I said, keeping my voice neutral. You mean like how you supported me when I got married? There was a pause. Don't be childish, my father cut in, his tone sharp. Your wedding was a completely different situation, right? Different because it was mine. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a bitter sort of amusement creep up my spine. How much? Mom's voice immediately brightened, as if my willingness to entertain the conversation meant I was already sold on the idea. Well, the venue alone is $20,000, and then there's catering, the dress, the flowers. I cut her off. How much do you want me to pay? Another pause. $10,000, she said, almost hesitantly, as if she knew how ridiculous it sounded but was still hoping I'd say yes. I let out a slow breath. No. Silence. Then the anger came. My parents' reaction to my refusal was immediate and brutal. You're being selfish, my father barked. Melanie would do this for you. I let out a humorless chuckle. Would she? Because I don't remember her offering to help when I was struggling to cover my own wedding expenses. She is your sister, my mother tried, her voice softer now, attempting manipulation instead of anger. This is what family does. Family. That word had been used against me my entire life. Growing up, it was always about Melanie. She was the golden child, the one whose every achievement was celebrated, whose every whim was indulged. I, on the other hand, was an afterthought. When she needed money for extracurricular activities, my parents found a way. When I needed help paying for college books, I was told to get another job. When she wanted to study abroad for a summer, they dipped into their savings. When I wanted to move into my first apartment, I had to figure it out myself. And somehow, through all of that, I still kept trying to prove myself to them. When Melanie graduated, I was already working full-time, saving up, being responsible. But that didn't stop my parents from expecting me to help support her. She's still figuring things out, my mom would say. You're more stable than she is. So I paid. I covered small things at first, her groceries, her phone bill. Then it became rent payments, car repairs, even her vacations. Every time I tried to protest, my parents shut me down. Your family. Family helps each other, but that so-called help only ever flowed in one direction. When I got engaged, I stupidly thought things would change. I had a small wedding, nothing extravagant, just a gathering of close friends and the few family members who actually cared. I invited my parents, of course. Despite everything, I still wanted them there. I still thought maybe if they saw how happy I was, they'd be happy for me too. They didn't come. Instead, they went on vacation with Melanie that weekend. I should have cut them off then. I should have seen the writing on the wall. But some part of me, the part that still craved their approval, held on. But now they were asking me for $10,000 like it was a given, like I owed them something. I thought saying no would be enough. I thought they'd accept it and move on. I was wrong. The escalation at first was just guilt-tripping, calls from my mother, messages from my father. Think about what you're doing, they'd say. Do you really want to be the reason your sister's wedding is ruined? Then Melanie got involved. You're seriously not helping? She texted one night. It's just money. You make plenty. Why are you being so bitter? Bitter. That word stung more than it should have. She had no idea what I had sacrificed for her. I didn't reply. A week later, the calls changed. No more fake concern, just anger. You think you're better than us? My father snarled. You think just because you got married and moved out, you're too good for your family? I almost laughed at how transparent it all was. No, I said calmly. I just think it's time you figured things out without me. The next day, I got an email from Melanie's fiancé, Jason. Subject, let's talk. Hey, I don't know what's going on between you and your family, but this is getting out of hand. Your parents are really upset, and Melanie is stressed beyond belief. I get that there's history here, but maybe we can come to some kind of compromise. You don't have to pay the full $10,000, but if you could contribute something, it would mean a lot. Let's talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Jason was a decent guy. I had nothing against him, but this wasn't his fight. I closed the email without replying. That was my second mistake. Because after that, things went nuclear. The breaking point builds. Melanie went full victim mode. She started posting vague social media updates about selfish people who don't care about family. She made sure to mention how heartbroken she was that certain loved ones were refusing to be there for her in her time of need. The messages poured in. Mutual friends, extended family, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. What's going on? Why aren't you helping Melanie? Dude, it's just money. Don't be that guy. At first I ignored it, but then I started getting messages from my parents' friends, people I barely knew. I always thought you were a good son. This is disgraceful. Your poor mother is beside herself. You should be ashamed. Ashamed. That was the word that finally pushed me over the edge. I had spent my entire life feeling ashamed. Ashamed that I wasn't enough. Ashamed that I wasn't the child they wanted. Ashamed that no matter how much I gave, it was never appreciated. But now I was done. If they wanted to see what selfish really looked like, I'd show them. And so I made my decision. I was going to cut them off completely. No more money, no more answering calls, no more pretending we were some kind of family. They had made their choice a long time ago. Now I was making mine. I knew the last conversation with my parents would be bad. But even I wasn't prepared for just how bad. They insisted we meet in person. We'll talk like adults, my mother had said. But I knew this wouldn't be a conversation. It would be an ambush. When I arrived at my parents' house, they were waiting. My mother, father, and of course Melanie. She was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, her face already red with anger. Sit down, my father ordered. I stayed standing. So he began. Let's talk about your disgraceful behavior. I almost laughed. Disgraceful behavior because I refused to hand them $10,000? This isn't disgraceful, I replied calmly. These are my boundaries. My mother threw up her hands. Boundaries? Seriously? You're turning your back on your own family. You should be helping your sister. I looked at Melanie. She was clutching her phone, jaw tight with frustration. Tell me, Melanie, I asked, crossing my arms. Would you help me if I asked? She rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be ridiculous. You have a great job. You're just being cheap. Cheap. I laughed, shaking my head. Do you even remember how much I've helped you? Your rent, your bills. Every time you ran into trouble, I bailed you out. You're my brother. That's what you're supposed to do. And there it was. The final confirmation. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I said. Let's put everything on the table then. I took out my phone and opened a document. It was a record of every expense I had covered for Melanie in the last 10 years. I turned the screen toward them. $28,700. That's how much I've spent on you, Melanie, not counting small favors, birthday gifts, or the times I helped Mom and Dad. The room went silent. I never asked for anything in return, I continued. But now, the first time I say no, you all turn on me. My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this nonsense. We are family, and family helps each other. I stared at him. Then where were you when I needed help? My mother gasped. How can you say that? We've always supported you. I let out a hollow laugh. Really? Then why didn't you come to my wedding? Their faces darkened. Melanie shot up from her seat, pointing a finger at me. You're just being bitter. You want to punish all of us because you're miserable. You've always been jealous because Mom and Dad love me more. I stared at her, waiting for the pain to hit. But there was nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. I finally understood. I was never family to them. I was just an ATM. I'm done, I said, voice steady. From this moment on, I am no longer part of this family. You made your choice, now I'm making mine. My father stood furious. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I smiled. Perfect. I turned and left. Melanie was screaming behind me. My mother started sobbing. But I didn't look back. When I got into my car, my father's number popped up on my phone. I silenced it. This time, they could cry, yell, and curse all they wanted. I was finally free. I thought walking away would be the end of it, that I could just cut them off and finally live my life in peace. I was wrong. The storm didn't pass. It only grew stronger. For the first few days, my phone was an explosion of calls and messages. My parents, Melanie, even distant relatives who had no business interfering. The messages ranged from guilt-tripping to outright insults. Mom, please, sweetheart, don't do this. We're family. Dad, you're being childish. Call us back. Melanie, you're so selfish. I hope you rot alone. Aunt Linda, I don't know what's happening, but your mother is in tears. Fix this. I ignored every single one. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of calm. A strange, unfamiliar silence that wasn't filled with demands, expectations, or obligations. I had always thought family was supposed to feel like home. But now that I had shut the door on them, I realized my home had never been with them in the first place. But my parents weren't the type to accept defeat. And then the real battle began. The guilt tactics. It took less than a week for my mother to switch from anger to desperation. She left voicemail after voicemail, her voice trembling on the verge of tears. I don't understand how you can be so cruel to your own family. Melanie's been so stressed about the wedding, she says she doesn't even want to go through with it anymore. Is that what you wanted? I miss you, sweetheart. Can we just talk? I almost believed that last one. Almost. But I knew better. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could do for them. They missed my money. They missed my compliance. They missed their control over me. It wasn't me they wanted back. It was the version of me they could manipulate. The sabotage attempt. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated. I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but when I listened, my stomach dropped. It was my boss. Hey, just wanted to check in. I got a call from your father. He said he was worried about you, that you were acting erratically and making reckless financial decisions. He asked if we could help. Call me back. I froze. They were trying to ruin my job. I called my boss immediately, explaining everything. He listened carefully, then let out a long sigh. That's some manipulative nonsense, he said. You don't need to worry, just focus on work. If they call again, I'll shut it down. I hung up, my hands shaking. They weren't just upset. I had become their enemy, and if they couldn't control me, they would rather see me fail. That was the moment I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision. The silence after that. The calls stopped. No more voicemails, no more messages, no more desperate attempts to pull me back in. At first I thought it was over. Then I realized they weren't done, they were just regrouping. 2 months passed. Life was quieter, calmer. I focused on work. I went out more. I started actually enjoying my life. Then one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Melanie, I hope you're happy. The wedding is canceled. Mom and Dad blame you. I blame you. You ruined everything." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The final attempt. 3 months later, just when I thought they had finally let go, my mother showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to see her standing there, clutching her purse, eyes red from crying. I should have slammed the door in her face. But I didn't. I stepped outside and crossed my arms. "What do you want?" She sniffled. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. Just waited. She took a deep breath. "Your father isn't doing well. This whole situation has put so much stress on him. He's not sleeping, he's barely eating." I said nothing. She tried again. "I know we made mistakes. I know things got complicated. But we're your family." That word again. Family. It was the word they had always used to keep me under control. To keep me giving, sacrificing, bending. But it didn't work anymore. "I'm not coming back, Mom," I said flatly. She looked stunned. "You can't mean that." "I do." Her face twisted. "So that's it? You're abandoning us?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You abandoned me years ago. I'm just returning the favor." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't even recognize you anymore." I met her gaze. "Maybe that's because for the first time I'm not bending over backwards for you?" She took a shaky breath, as if trying to process that. Then she shook her head. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, stepping back inside. "I won't." And I shut the door. Moving forward. That was the last time I saw my mother. I heard through distant relatives that Melanie ended up having a smaller, cheaper wedding, that my parents weren't happy about it, that they blamed me for everything. I expected that. What I didn't expect was how good it would feel to finally be free. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more being treated like an ATM instead of a son. For the first time in my life, I was living for me, and I had never been happier. I used to think that family was forever, that no matter what, blood was thicker than water, that if I just proved myself, worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, one day my parents would finally see my worth. That day never came, and now it never will. It's been a year since I walked away, since I set boundaries and finally chose myself over them. And in that year, I've learned more about family, love, and self-respect than I ever did in all the years I spent trying to please them. But it wasn't easy. The aftermath. What came next after my mother showed up at my apartment and I shut the door on her? I expected her to keep trying. Maybe another surprise visit, maybe more guilt-tripping texts. Instead, I got nothing. Total silence. And honestly, that was almost worse. For the first few weeks, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I checked my phone constantly, half expecting a missed call or another dramatic message from Melanie. But there was nothing. It was like I had ceased to exist to them. At first, it hurt. As much as I had wanted to break free, some part of me, the part that had spent decades trying to earn their approval, still ached at how easily they let me go. But then, little by little, that hurt started to fade. Because I realized something, I wasn't losing a family. I was escaping a cage, finding myself again. Without them in my life, I had to ask myself, who am I when I'm not being used? For so long, my identity had been tied to my role in the family. I was the provider, the one who fixed everything, the one who kept everyone afloat even at my own expense. Now, for the first time, I was just me, and at first, that was terrifying. I didn't know what to do with all the time, energy, and money that was no longer being drained by them. I had no idea what I actually wanted in life, because I had never been allowed to prioritize myself. So I started small. I went on my first real vacation, one where I didn't have to worry about bailing someone else out. I traveled to Europe, something I had always dreamed of but never let myself do because family responsibilities came first. I started going to therapy, working through years of manipulation and self-doubt. My therapist was the first person who ever said to me, "You don't owe them anything." and I actually started to believe it. The final attempt. 6 months after I cut them off, my father tried to reach out one last time. I was at work when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but when I listened, my stomach twisted. "Dad, look, I know things got messy, but we're still your parents and you'll always be our son. I think it's time to let the past go and come home." I sat there staring at the phone, emotions warring inside me. Not once did he say sorry. Not once did he acknowledge what they had done. Just a smooth, calculated attempt to reel me back in like nothing had ever happened. I thought about calling back, about giving him one last chance, but then I remembered everything. The years of emotional blackmail, the way they had laughed behind my back while taking my money, the way they had sabotaged me when I refused to play their game. And I deleted the voicemail. That was the last time they ever tried to contact me. A new beginning. 1 year later, I'm happier than I've ever been. I got a promotion at work, something that would have been impossible if I was still financially shackled to my family's endless needs. I moved to a new city far away from the toxicity of my past. And most importantly, I built real relationships, people who actually cared about me, friends who didn't see me as a wallet, a partner who loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. For the first time in my life, I know what healthy love feels like. Lessons learned. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's this. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love. Just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they deserve access to your life. Love without respect isn't love, it's control. And no matter what anyone says, you don't owe anyone your peace, your money, or your sanity just because you share DNA. I used to think that walking away from my family was the worst thing I could ever do. Now I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me.